Hello everyone and welcome to the regular Flange with Flange Master Tal. My name's Graham and on my lap you can't got my lap cuddles while we're recording. And we're talking about today the PlayStation 4 fully automated factory flange I found out about. This is super interesting to me because obviously Sony's they're going to take all this stuff they learned how to do the PlayStation 4 fully automation and apply it to the PS5. How could they not? And as we get into it, you'll see it's more of a question of just how far have they been able to take it, because some of this stuff does take time for them to flange up. But what's really cool and crazy, as we flange on into this deeper, is like not even Tesla's achieved what Sony has with automations at this point, which is just, that's mind-blowing to think about. Like, Sony's beyond Tesla's capability for automation, and Tesla's kind of like, they're kind of what everyone talks about when it comes to automation these days. And it's really crazy to be like, whoa, Sony beat Tesla to the fully automation flange. And there's a difference between cars and PlayStations, obviously, and we will jump into the articles here as I hopefully fucking hotkeys. Anyways, yes, the hotkeys, one day I'll get that straightened out so it's not so annoying. Anyway, so this IGN article is a friend pointed me in this direction and started with the IGN article, which kind of just repackages the original Nikkei, I'm not sure how to pronounce that, Nikkei Asian review, and this full article is very interesting. Highly recommend you reading it yourself. It's very interesting. We'll go to the graphic rich version because there's just so much interesting, cool graphics that go along with it. And yeah, so we're talking about the PlayStation 4, obviously, but really what we're really getting at is how this is going to apply to the PlayStation 5. How much is this going to prevent delays? How much will this help them maximize not only units available, but profits? And, in the original manufacturing run and all that stuff, and for the first release, tends to always be limited, so that's no surprise to hear that it's limited. But it becomes now a question of, well, how limited will it be if they're able to achieve what they have with the PS4, which, as we go through the article, apparently they were able to reach full automation in 2018, so it's been roughly 2 years or so that they have been fully automated, and moving to the point of becoming fully automated is in a large part for why the PlayStation 4 hardware has actually become kind of a good profit maker for them. And not only is it fully manufactured, it takes only 30 seconds to make a fully automated PS4. 30 freaking seconds. That is mind-blowing. Robots can put together what we're looking at in 30 seconds, which most of it's like, okay, they just parts go together, whatever. But, we start looking at, if you pay attention to the cursor, like, that Wi-Fi cable, that cable, the ribbon cables, like, look at all those ribbon cables. That's the difficult thing for automation, and that's where it gets really interesting and really cool, is they're not very specific about it because they want to keep these secrets to themselves, what they've been able to figure out. Obviously, other people will eventually replicate what they've done, but to be able to deal with these flexible cables and stuff, that's the real challenge and the real hurdle with full automation, and that's the kind of stuff where people have to get involved because there's so many more variables. Like, just grab a cable and be like, okay, so here we got my headphone cable. Let's get it all unwrapped. So, we gotta we'll use my mic stand for an example. Hopefully this doesn't fuck with the audio. So we got this thing here. So we gotta get, let's say, just totally hypothetical example just to get the point through. So we gotta get this cable threaded through here in some specific manner and then plug into whatever. A robot does that all. But the thing is, with something like this, because it's not stiff and consistent, depending on how you push it, it'll, it's cable. I shouldn't have to explain this really, But like you all should get the idea where I'm going with this is like it's not that simple for a robot to accommodate for all these variables and how the cable can move and react and all that. So for them to have figured out something like that is huge. Not just for Sony and PlayStation, but for all automation. This is the kind of thing that can push automation forward to the point where like we really actually do start losing jobs and need a guaranteed minimum income and or universal basic income, whatever you want to call it. So this is not just huge for Sony and the PlayStation 5 potentially, it's huge for everything. This impacts the meta of manufacturing in a very massive way. And it'll take some time for other manufacturers to figure out the same thing Sony's figured out, or just, you know, buy the licensing of their patent, or just, you know, depending on how, because the thing is, I've mentioned this in previous not podcasts, but episodes. If it's a trade secret, they don't have to tell anyone. So if they register this information as a trade secret, they don't have to tell anyone. If they file it as a patent, anyone can see what they did. So if they file all this information as a patent, and no one's like, if the patents are out there, I've not come across them or become aware of them. So it could be a trade secret. I'm not sure. I don't have that information, wasn't able to acquire it. But it's quite likely they'd be smart enough to register this kind of information as a trade secret. That way no one else can copy it and they have to figure it out on their own. But if it's patent, people can copy it. Usually with patents, they want licensing fees for other people to copy it. Or people use the patent to do their own version of it that's significantly different from the original patent. That's the thing. If it's different enough, and it doesn't necessarily have to be that different even, like patents are actually pretty specific. All that patent trolling you might have heard about a few years ago, that actually shouldn't be happening the way patents are supposed to work. Anyways, so it could take a while for this to ripple through the meta and all manufacturing to catch up to this. But for now, it gives Sony a huge advantage over the Xbox Series X as well in terms of more so profitability and ability to push a large amount of units onto the market. PlayStation could wind up outdoing Xbox on release just in terms of sales and stuff, just because they might have more units, be able to update their stock faster, and then also have a larger margin just because of a high level of automation Microsoft might not be able to replicate. And yeah, here we get a look at, so it's those ribbon cables there. That's the problem, especially like if you've ever done any of your own repairs or anything and like dealt with ribbon cables, plugging them in is a freaking pain in the butt sometimes. It can be not fun to plug in a ribbon cable. It can be like just this, like here, that's a perfect example where those 3 ribbon cables are for a machine. That's very, very difficult for a machine to be able to handle all of that at all. So also, you see how the ribbon cables are bent in very specific ways? That's something I noticed just working on items, and it's like, it's supposed to be initially, at least as far as I'm aware, a way to just make them fit in better, but I see, at least in my own vision, whatever you want to call it, but what I see is these specific folds being used to help guide the robotic arms and stuff in being able to place it properly. So the folds are there not just to help it save space and fit in and make everything all flange nicely. It could also be to help the automated robots put the cables in the right places so that it's not producing too many defects or errors or anything. Man, this overhead shot of the production line is amazing. This is so cool. Like, it's out of my capacity for now. I'd love to be able to do something like what Gamers Nexus has been doing, but if this ever gets into Gamers Nexus's ear, if Gamers Nexus could ever get their way into the Sony factory, even if it's just for the PS4 stuff and not the PS5, just seeing their manufacturing process at all to whatever extent they let us to would be really freaking cool. But there's levels of this they don't want people to see because it'll give away maybe some of their secrets. And so reading through the article, one of the things that struck me, here's the image from the thumbnail, all credit to the original article here. So reading through the article, one of the really cool, interesting things also is apparently the way the arms work and move has a very human-like flow to it, which is kind of a necessity to be able to do things humans do. They kind of gotta move like humans do. So it totally makes sense to hear that, and very interesting. So like I was saying about the folds, and you see how it's stacked up, those folds could be part of the process of how the robots are able to do what they do. And they do have some interesting shots here. So it's just, to me, it just, I have so many questions how they're able to accomplish this. I can make a lot of speculation. We don't have enough time to really go into that deep speculation, but if you want to jump into like, well, the Twitch streams are on pause for a couple of weeks. But yeah, if you want to jump into the comments or anything like that, Twitter, you know, I would love to speculate and talk about how they've been able to accomplish this, because it's very fascinating. But we can see enough here that it's like, it's, you can see how intelligent it was, how they designed it. And so what this leads me to think is with the PS5, and also reading the article and being able to understand more about how the PS4 manufacturing flange was a bit of a process that took some time for them to figure out. My speculation with the PS5 manufacturing and how automated it might be is it might not be as fully automated, because some of these things specific to the PS5 could take just a little bit more time to fully develop, because there's kind of like almost a training process for the robots, so they know exactly what to do, and for them to be able to adapt, there's kind of, training's not the right term, and programming isn't either. Like it's because there has to be a level of adaptability to unforeseen variables and how a cable might move that the robot doesn't expect, and also how they put this together. It seems like it's meant to minimize potential unexpected cable movement so they can be as consistent as possible. And oh, they do, I forgot, they do show it plugging in those annoying ribbon cables that can be not easy to deal with, and they don't really show or tell you necessarily that much, but it is interesting. So I'm assuming that's some sort of suction arm, and yeah, that looks like an airline. So they're probably air suctioning it and then using that to place it. And so it becomes difficult because while it's moving that cable, let's say like it wiggles in some way that it's not expected and it loses it, or it doesn't get plugged in all the way. Now it's a defective unit. So, you know, they could try and get robots too before they figured this out, but then you'd wind up with maybe too many defects, where things just weren't plugged in properly, or maybe a ribbon cable got broken, because they can be kind of fragile. You can't be too rough on them. And that's the other thing too, is some of these ribbon cables and stuff, you bend them too much in the wrong way and they're done permanently, because they've got very thin, fragile wires inside of the insulation. Man, these shots of inside the factory are just amazing. And yeah, can't say it enough. What Sony's figured out to be able to be fully automated, amazing, innovative. I don't think there's anyone else that can claim true full automation like Sony's been able to achieve. And oh, that looks like a tray of hard drives or hard drive cages. Interesting. But yeah, so another factor before we wrap up here is labor cost. We were talking about production costs. So there is a bigger meta issue of now there's people that won't have jobs because their jobs are automated. But when it comes to us buying the console, it keeps costs down for us because now they don't have to pay people, which are generally the most expensive cost of a business. And there is a bigger meta issue here of people not having jobs because of automation. That's a discussion for another day, but that is a discussion. A lot of the sci-fi I've read over my life has talked about that kind of stuff a lot, like stuff from the 80s. Like this has been a long predicted thing that's going to happen where we hit fully automation, and it's like, you know, 2020 has kind of like been the year of like, oh, it's the future now. Well, this is the fucking future now. We're just going to ignore that. That's probably Instacart. And yeah, the PlayStation foretells the future of manufacturing. 100%. That's the future of manufacturing, and the PlayStation 5 might wind up being innovative more so for its manufacturing in a lot of ways than the actual console itself. I wouldn't be surprised. And, you know, they're not going to talk about this stuff until after it's released. They don't want to, like, you know, they don't want to give anything away. They don't want to give Microsoft any hints they could use against them or that kind of thing. And yeah, this is just so interesting and crazy. So we're briefly going to jump through some other articles just to kind of finish putting this all in context. So the limited production, I don't think that's always happens. There's never an unlimited amount of consoles. The only time consoles don't sell out on release is when they're not that good, like the Wii U. Pretty much everything else is like blows up, big deal, sells out. So of course there's going to be a limited amount. I think it's just, and the thing is, this kind of actually builds hype for it when they're like limited amounts, because now it's like, oh shit, I gotta get on that pre-order because I might not get it. So they might be wanting people to release stuff like that just to throw in that hype of I forget what the term is, but just limited quantities kind of hype, where there's a term for it, artificial scarcity, except it might not be artificial because there are limits. They've got to start new factories, they still have to manufacture PS4s while manufacturing PS5s, because PS4s still relevant. There's still going to be people sticking to PS4, especially when games are both PS4 and PS5. So I wouldn't take too much stock into that kind of news stuff out there. Now this is interesting. I think the automation could very much help or actually be offsetting the high cost of parts to keep it actually at a more reasonable price range for us. And it could be that the only thing keeping our PlayStation 5 costs reasonable is fully automated manufacturing, or almost fully automated manufacturing. And with this supposed 450 USD price per unit, that's doesn't leave them a whole lot of room for profit margins potentially. So we kind of gotta wait and see, as I'm fond of saying. But I think no matter, well, not necessarily no matter, but whatever the parts cost is, by keeping manufacturing costs down using the automation tricks and knowledge and skills they've learned with the PS4 and applying it to the PS5, they can keep that price per unit from blowing the cost up, where maybe the Xbox Series X might be a bit more on the expensive side because they don't have automated manufacturing. And even though it's got more powerful other stuff and not as powerful as an SSD, the PlayStation might wind up kind of being the dominant console between Xbox and Sony, again, just because they're able to keep costs down from automated manufacturing, because both consoles are going to have this issue with high cost of parts. It's kind of hard not to. I'm not the only one that's done it, where tried to compare pricing to PC pricing, and if we start looking at equivalent PC pricing, it's like, they're struggling to keep these fucking prices down so they don't have to take a loss. And yeah, this is just super interesting to me, super fascinating. I think this fully automated flange at the PS4, that it's kind of crazy to me this hasn't blown up in the news until just now, and there might be a reason they've blown this up in the news until just now. I think they might be being strategic about it to kind of be like, hey, don't be too worried about the PS5, we're fully automated, without really quite saying it. And maybe I'm reading into it a bit too much there, but that's my speculation anyways. So yeah, let me know what you all think. I'm pretty excited about this. Are you excited about this? Do you think it's going to have a big impact on the PS5 costs or manufacturing, or my hotkeys never being as... Anyways, yeah, how do you think this is going to impact things? How far to fully automation do you think the PS5 might be or might not be? Do you think Xbox might have something similar going, but they just haven't talked about it? Let me know what you're thinking in the comments down below. Hit that subscribe button, should be over on that side somewheres if you haven't already. Hit that bell for notifications so you always keep up to date with the awesome content here on Flange Master Tal. And yeah, give me a thumbs up if you like this, give me a thumbs down if you didn't. But if you give me a thumbs down, jump in the comments, give me some constructive feedback and criticism, let me know what I can do better. Just please be respectful and kind about it. Also, please be specific. It's just hard to take action on vague, unspecific criticism and advice. So if you do have criticism to offer, please try and be specific, just so it's easier for me to take action on it. And that should more or less wrap things up for today. Last of Us 2 Full Flange will be coming next week as soon as I can get that done. That should be very interesting now that I've beat the game. Just a quick note on that, I guess if anything, a bit of a preview on what to expect from the Full Flange. If I was to sum up my opinion of The Last of Us 2 in basically a sentence or so, it would be, even though it has serious flaws with the pacing of the narrative and other narrative flaws and issues, I'd still give it a very high rating, not a 10 though, but a very high rating, because even though it gets a lot wrong, what it gets wrong, it still gets wrong very, very well, or does very, very well at what it gets wrong, if that makes sense. If it doesn't, it'll make more sense when when we all flange up the Full Flange next week on The Last of Us 2. And yeah, that should be everything. Thanks everyone for watching, for supporting, and all that good stuff. Thanks for remembering to bring your towels as always, and have a good one.